Hi, and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host, Vicky Midwood, health coach and addiction eliminator. And today I am solo yet again. I've had a spate of guests who were lined up to be on the show, and then various things have happened. It's that time of year, isn't it, where we've got holidays and unexpected things do crop up. So I thought I would share with you something again that comes up. And I've said this before. I believe that things come up for a reason, and it gives me something to share with you guys that I hope resonates. So what I'm talking about today is about fear of change. Actually, more specifically, fear of failure, but fear of success, because they are two sides of the same coin, especially when it comes to changing our habits, changing how we think and feel about ourselves, and just how we are looking after or not our body and our brain. So for those of you who may be new to me, I specialize in helping people with dysfunctional and disordered eating problems, whether that's anorexia, orthorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, or any of those other kind of ways of behaving around food that you feel are not necessarily causing you joy. Okay, so there are a number of other labels and names of things, but I think for the majority of people, they know if they feel uncomfortable and if they are eating or drinking alcohol specifically in a different way to the majority of people around them. And often it causes them to feel uncomfortable, self-conscious, maybe embarrassed. And depending on how long they've been struggling with these things for, it can start to take over every thought and every decision that they make. And so what do I mean by that? Well, often the people that I help to get over this stuff will find that the very first thing they wake up thinking about is, what does my body feel like? Right? Is my tummy flat, for example? And they may wake up and run their hands down their body, and that will determine how they feel and think about themselves. Other people may wake up feeling exhausted and not want to face the day because of what happened the day before. And that's often the case with people who are bulimic, in that they are binging and purging, or binging and purging in a way that is not necessarily throwing up, but over exercising, and compensating in some way, shape or form to, in their heads, get rid of or burn off the, in their heads, excess calories that they've eaten. Now, I'm saying in their heads like that for a reason, because a lot of the time, the people who talk to me about having a binge, they are just eating what anybody else would class as a reasonably normal amount of food. But because they're in restriction mode, either to make up for a binge the previous day, or because they believe that they are too big, they need to lose body fat or body weight or just become smaller, they are restricting, then they are by default setting themselves up to repeat the pattern. And here's where the fear part of it comes in, because the majority of the people that I help have a massive fear of weight and what weight equals. And there's this idea that if I can control my size, I can control everything else in my life. The reality is that's not true, because if it was true, most of them have been controlling their food for a long time, and the rest of their life still isn't sorted, right? And it never can be, because your size doesn't determine your ability to manage your emotions and the things that happen in the day-to-day world that either do or don't affect you personally. And yet we've made a connection, and I'm saying we because I used to be exactly the same. I truly believe that if I was in charge and in control of my shape and my size. If I was thinner, I would be able to feel more confident. I would be more intelligent somehow. I would be feel more accepted. And just in my head, I believed that miraculously, everything I wanted would come to fruition and the world would be working with me and everything in the garden would be rosy. Totally delusional, right? But that is a powerful belief. It's a completely incorrect and untrue belief, but it's a powerful one that we keep on repeating to ourselves over and over again. And one thing that I want to share here, and I think it's really important for anybody listening who is struggling, but also for anybody listening who knows somebody who is struggling. What isn't talked about when we are kids, and it's not talked about at school, and it's not talked about by our parents or grandparents or any kind of authority figures. And so we have to learn this, and some of us, it takes us a while. It takes us quite a long while to learn it. Is that we all have multiple different voices chattering away in our heads, all of us. Right? It's just that nobody talks about it. So when we talk about inner chatter or an inner voice or an inner critic or an inner bully or just the thoughts that we are thinking, these are all different, and we will have so many different thoughts. Now, they only ever come in one at a time, but they do come in. And what I know is that the majority of the people I work with think that nobody else has this. They don't understand that every single human being thinks thoughts. Now, do we all think in the same way? No, we absolutely do not. Do we all have the same thoughts? We don't, but we definitely have similar emotions. And often our emotions fuel our thoughts, and our thoughts are fueled by our emotions. Now, there's a lot of people who will debate it's a thought first and then it's a feeling. Other people will say, no, you get feelings first and then you get the thoughts that come in. It's both, right? Again, let's get away from this either or, and this is being right and this is being wrong. No, it happens both ways, right? Sometimes we will get a feeling that is then accompanied by a thought, and sometimes we will get a powerful thought that then creates a very powerful physiological sensation in our bodies. So fear and excitement are two examples of that. We have a thought and then we may feel that stomach churning, gut wrenching fear, right? Or we may have that kind of butterfly effect in our tummy first, and we recognize, oh, that must be excitement. So it happens both ways. And to even have a debate that this is first and that's second, right? Doesn't matter. It's both, right? We're humans. We work as an orchestra, right? Sometimes the violins come in first, and sometimes the piano comes in first. Okay, and it doesn't matter as long as they both do come in, and they do, because it's our thoughts and our feelings that will then dictate the behaviors that we choose to take or not to take. And this is where the fear comes in, because so many people that I help to get over this stuff are terrified. I don't mean just a little bit scared, but are terrified of letting go of their current behavior patterns, even though every part of them says they don't want to be doing this anymore. Whether that is turning to alcohol on a daily basis, and whether it is throwing up, over-exercising, or telling themselves the same story that they're not good enough, that they need to try harder, that they always have to be doing something, otherwise they're wasting their life and wasting time. All of this stuff has been programmed. And it's not true. But they keep on repeating it. And what we do know is what we keep on repeating, we will believe is true. And it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. That's irrelevant. You keep doing the same behavior, you keep repeating it. then there's a part of your brain that now believes you need to keep doing that to survive. Why? Because you've done it so often, so frequently. And when you seem to do this behavior, you seem to be calmer and more relaxed. And so the brain, because the brain's always trying to be helpful, the brain goes, oh yeah, okay, so this is really important for us to survive, which is why letting go of addictive, self-destructive habits that to the outside world seem bonkers that you keep on doing them, you've actually trained your brain and your body to recognize these as behavior patterns and thinking patterns that are required for your survival. And this is why then the fear kicks in massively if we are told or we believe we can't do these things anymore. Because, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? We're not going to die, but that is going to be what your brain is telling you. And as I said earlier, there are multiple voices in your brain. So your logical brain can go, okay, on a logical level, I know I'm not going to die if I don't do this. But there isn't just a logical side to your brain, right? I see the brain as having 3 layers. I haven't got 3 hands. So the most powerful, the fastest part of your brain, the reptile part of your brain, the one that literally is only concerned with your survival, is always going to kick in. It's going to kick in fast before you're even consciously aware of it. Right? The conscious part of your brain, the decision-making part of your brain, the executive functioning part of your brain is much slower. Now, add in the fact that a number of people have ADD, ADHD, who also are addictive. ADD, ADHD, whichever term you like to use, they are like this. They are bedfellows. Why? Because the habits, the self-destructive habits that we have around food and around alcohol and exercise, all of those give us the dopamine hit. Not only do they give us the dopamine hit, but they also increase our endorphins too. And when we're looking at neurotransmitters, endorphins are a different type of neurotransmitter to the things that we know as kind of the neurotransmitters, the serotonin, the dopamine, the GABA, the catecholamines, etc. And what we don't recognize is that physiologically, our body, biochemically, right, is used to these combination of neurotransmitters and endorphins floating around our body. And it knows that that specific combination that goes with, say, you drinking alcohol or you throwing up is powerful. And when you have drunk the alcohol and when you have thrown up, guess what happens? You feel more in control. You feel more relaxed. You feel like the voices that are constantly switched on, especially if you have ADHD, they never seem to shut up. They just quieten down for a bit. And so, of course, your brain logs that because your brain is always trying to help you. And it goes, hey, this works. You know what? Keep doing it. Makes you feel better. So this is where when somebody says to an addict, well, just stop doing it. It's really not as simple as that, because every part of body and mind is telling you to keep going because it works, right? And addicts are not stupid. If you go to any of the addiction groups, you will find a vast array of people from all walks of life, of all intelligences, right? Addiction ain't picky. It doesn't care. It doesn't care how intelligent you are. It doesn't care what your marital status is. It doesn't care how much money you earn. It doesn't care who your parents are. It doesn't care what car you drive or where you live or what country you're from or what religion you are. It doesn't care. Because what we recognize is that an addiction is a behavior that you keep on repeating to the extent now that we have conditioned body and mind to believe we need it to survive. And that is why the fear is very, very powerful and very real. If you're not consistently worrying about food and you're not consistently thinking about your body size and your shape, it means then that you might have to confront the other parts of your life that you're hoping controlling your size and your shape is going to suddenly miraculously make okay. It's not. But if you don't keep your brain and your whole life occupied by these things, you're going to have to look over there and you're going to have to address those things. And that is what I help people to do, because actually it's not the food and the drink that is the problem. I know that sounds crazy because it seems like it is, and that'll be why people do come to me. But they're a solution. They're helping you to feel better, just like you would take a pill if you've got a headache. It's a solution. It helps you to feel better. But just like taking a tablet if you've got a headache, it's temporary, right? What caused the headache in the first place? That's what we need to look at. And that is what I do. And this is where people, find the process enlightening but also confusing, because I don't start with food and alcohol when I start working with somebody. I start with what's going on in their life. Who are they living with? Who are the people who are causing them to feel less than? Who are the people who they are feeling that they are responsible for in some way, shape, or form? Because this is the stuff that we need to look at, because it's the other stuff that's going on in life that is actually keeping you wanting to focus on your body, because you don't know how to deal with that. And it's not your fault. The reason you don't know how to deal with that stuff is because you probably had poor role models, and you don't have the communication skills, and you don't have the emotional skills, you don't have the nervous system regulation skills, you don't have the words perhaps or the language to actually understand and be able to deal with the other stuff. And that is what I spend the majority of my time helping people to do. It's looking at language. It's looking at our values and our beliefs that often are not ours. They're ones that have been programmed into us via our families, via our parents, by our grandparents, by school teachers, by religious bodies, if that is what you had as part of your upbringing, by looking at films, by social media. All of this stuff creates a narrative of what we should do, how we should behave, what is a good feeling, what is a bad feeling. We're taught, for example, that there is good feelings and bad feelings. We're taught that there is a good way to behave and a bad way to behave. There's a way that's acceptable, that will make people like you, and then there's ways that are unacceptable. And all of this stuff gets programmed in. The problem is, as we're going through life, we're not necessarily able to practice this stuff. And when we do get it wrong, it creates emotions and sensations in us that we just don't know what to do with. Why? Because nobody talks about it, right? Especially if you've been struggling for decades, if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, then the chances are that there were never any conversations about feelings or emotions. We just didn't do it back then. My parents definitely didn't, and I know for a fact that their parents didn't either. And it gets passed down through generations. So if now you are somebody in your 20s and you have got parents who don't really talk about feelings because they poo-poo it, or you mamby-pamby talking about your feelings, blah, blah, blah. If you get in that sense that they don't approve, and let's face it, anybody who has an addiction issue is very likely to be high when it comes to scoring on perfectionism and people pleasing. They often go hand in hand. There's this innate desire to be liked by everybody. And if you're not liked, especially if you've got ADHD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria is powerful and very real. And so we don't know how to handle these things because our fear is, I'm going to upset somebody. They won't like me. I better keep quiet. And so we never learn what we are actually able and capable of doing. So the fear is massive. The fear of being successful means you have to change your identity. And that's scary. Okay. It is really scary. But here's the thing. You cannot become the person you want to be, the person who is not spending their life with it revolving around thoughts of drinking and eating and exercising and body size, which is actually all me, I focused. If you're going to change your identity from that, you have to change it completely, which means you have to train your brain first, along with your mind, which is how we train our brain, to look at things differently. And we have to take a leap of faith to actually do things differently. And when we do things differently and we look at things different, when we start that reprogramming process, oh my God, is it uncomfortable? Remember what I said right back at the beginning? Every part of your brain is going to scream at you that you're going to die because it feels like it's under threat. Threat equals death as far as your reptilian part of your brain is concerned. And so it's going to convince you not to keep going. And this is why often, if you've worked with anybody and gotten help for any issues in the past, and you go, well, it hasn't lasted. Well, it isn't a thing for a start off. You are the one who actually has to keep the process going. But you've got to recognize, and unless the person that you've been working with has helped you to understand really clearly that your default programming has been around a lot longer than this new stuff that you're trying to input. And you are, especially when you're under stress, under a lot of pressure, you are going to revert back and default back to those old familiar patterns because your brain doesn't want to stay in a state of threat and discomfort and unfamiliarity for a long period of time. So it's going to convince you via multiple voices that go on in your head telling you just this once will be okay. It's not going to be as bad as you think. You know what? Everybody has a blip, right? And you're going to give yourself permission. And then as soon as you've done it, the other voices will come in and go, see, you never stick at anything. Look how terrible you are. You're always letting yourself down. What's your therapist going to think? What's your coach going to think? What your parents going to think? All of this stuff. Now you feel even worse. When you feel even worse, guess what your brain says? Well, you know what? You've blown it now. Might as well carry on, right? This is a really familiar pattern and process. The thing is, once you know that, once you're aware of it, once you recognize it's going to happen, but the more you practice resilience in the other stuff, in other areas of your life, and you start to create evidence that actually you can be more confident, you can stand up for yourself, and you don't have to do it by being rude, and actually you can say what you need, and people will actually give you that rather than rejecting you for asking you what you need. When you start to build up that evidence, that's when you can move that over into this side of things. But we have to do this stuff simultaneously. And it always starts off by recognizing the only way that you can start to make the changes that you need to make and create the brand new identity that you do want to be is to recognize you do have to let go of the stories and the beliefs that you are hanging on to, because these are the things that keep you in fear. The stories that say, if you eat one mouthful of ice cream, you'll never stop. The stories that say, once I'm full, that's it. I have to turn it into a binge. The stories that say you are weak-willed and rubbish if you decided you were only going to eat one of something and you end up eating two. Those powerfully restrictive patterns and stories that you are trying to live by are the very, very thing that keep you stuck right in the middle of your illness. But trusting that you can stop at two, and actually then practicing that and dealing with the discomfort and the multiple voices that will come in that will convince you to now make it into a binge, or that you're now going to put on like 3 stone overnight. Well, it's not that ridiculous, but they will convince you that, just eating a normal portion of something is suddenly going to make you put on so many pounds in a dress size. All totally untrue. But because you've kept repeating it, you're going to listen to those voices. And it takes some emotional resilience, and it takes some understanding that actually this is normal. And you just have to almost go, la, 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 not listening to you. Go and do something else and take your thought process and take your energy into somewhere else, because it is about energy. And so to leave this on a practical note, your fear of failing at getting better, right, is very real. But your fear of succeeding often is more powerful, because succeeding means you're going to be a person who you don't yet know. But what I want for you to try and take on board is that person is always been inside of you. You're just going to let it out. You're not going to be this completely new human that you don't recognize. You are already capable of being the person that you say you want to be. You just are scared to discover what that feels like. And what I can say to you is, when you do it with the guidance and the support of somebody who's been exactly where you are and understands the challenges, it doesn't make it easy. It's never easy, but it does make it easier for you to keep on going when that part of your brain that thinks you're under threat, by changing your habit patterns and thoughts and behaviors, actually, you know what, it's going to be okay. And that's what I want to leave you with. Fear is a feeling and it's powerful, but it's not the truth. You can overcome this stuff, but it will take support, guidance, mentoring, and it will take courage, and it will take you to start being more compassionate with yourself, which in and of itself is a challenge. But without compassion and without courage, then you cannot and you will not get free of this stuff permanently. And I am here to help you with that compassion and that courage. But you have to decide that you have had enough of doing what you're doing and you are ready to step into that actually quite fun and quite enjoyable journey of creating the identity of a person who is at peace in their own skin. I hope that's been helpful. If you have enjoyed what you have heard, please do give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed. If you would like to have a free consultation with me, or you know somebody who would like to, please do pass on this video to them. I would really appreciate it. I am here to help folks. I can't help everybody. You have to be in a space and a place where you actually want help, and I can't do it for you. But I can help you to navigate what you can do for yourself. And what I do know is every single person is much more capable of doing things than they ever realize, especially when they've got somebody who has got their back. And so I'll leave you with this. We only have one life as far as we know, and one body. Please look after it, because it is looking after you. Take care of yourself.